Michael the Bounty Hunter, at one time a sneakily good heavyweight who famously bashed up Martin Bakole. Prior to COVID he was looking to make some moves, then he had that draw against Povetkin, although many thought he won that fight. Plus, for what it's worth, Povetkin was cheating his tits off around that time and getting away with it. But along with that, the only other blemish on his record at this stage in his career came against the Ukrainian king in his prime. A fight in which Usyk incredibly threw over 900 punches, but Hunter stood tall and finished on his feet. This man is tough, skillful, experienced, and should have been a massive problem for the heavyweight division. However, basically his career has been like an episode of Mr. Fucking Bean. It has been a complete balls up the whole way along, and here he is still in 2025, smack bang in the middle of no man's land. So what went wrong? Well, it all began so well. He was a standout amateur, winning the national championships, the Golden Gloves, and even representing his country in the London Olympics 2012. Unfortunately losing to the formidable Artur Beterbiev in the first round. Then after over 100 amateur fights, he turned pro in 2013 and got off to a flying start. 12 solid wins starting at heavyweight, then moving to cruiserweight for a world title opportunity against Usyk in 2017. But things began to go a bit wrong before this, because in 2014 he was working with promoter Dan Goosen, who unfortunately passed away, and that's just one example of Michael getting a bit unlucky in the business of boxing, but believe me, there's plenty more to come. Now, of course, he came up short against Usyk, but there's no shame in that. However, he went straight back into the glamour division to make his mark, travelling all the way over to Little York Hall for a very interesting fight against Martin Bakole.
They go 2 or 3 rounds ago. Hunter looks so tired, but he's recovered. The pace has suited him. It's dropped. And Hunter now, quality shots.
Now, legend has it, Bakole sparred Hunter back in the day. He said he threw a jab and Hunter's head fell clean off and landed on the floor. Apparently Billy Nelson had to get his nan to sew it back on. Fucking mental, innit? But regardless, when it mattered, Bakole just couldn't deal with the tough American, and Hunter cleaned him out in good fashion. Off the back of this though, he did actually get a big break, signing with Matchroom and Eduardo Hearn, and after a couple of decent wins against Ustinov and Kuzmin, he got the Alexander Povetkin fight in Saudi Arabia, chief support to Cartman versus AJ2.
He's got to be wary of what's coming back with that left hook.
Yeah, I agree, John. I think he's got to go for it here because he's heard him, and he's got to try and get the stuff.
Brought a wince from Alexander Povetkin and a left hook as well from Michael Hunter, and a good spell here for the American.
Balance. It's like he's waiting to counter. He's waited. Here's the left hook.
Good left hand from Povetkin. Just stumbled on the ropes there, and he talks to his corner. And Povetkin a bit all at sea again, Tony.
Yeah, he's really like it. Oh, he's punching it here now. Hunter really digging in these shots.
That's it. That's the way to do it. In and out. Nice pass. He's hurt him. Big right hand from Hunter. 11th round.
Big right hand. It's gone.
And Povetkin is dire straits here. There's so much time left in the round. And Michael Hunter could be on the verge of a dramatic victory.
114 to 114. We have a split draw.
Now, just by the by, before we do carry on, if you fancy watching a bit of boxing this weekend, we've got old Darren Till back in action against Luke Rockhold in X Series over on Dasney, and it's been a bit spicy, this one.
I am. I'm gonna f***ing kill it. I'm gonna back
Yes, on top of that, it's got a bit of salt and pepper on there against the legendary Tony Ferguson, as well as old Joey Essex making his boxing debut. There you go. If you sign up to an annual plan, you get the pay-per-view for absolutely free, or buy it solo and get a 7-day free trial. Link below, enjoy. So anyway, he just can't catch a break, this fella. Many had him winning this fight, but the judges couldn't agree. Now, at this point, he was a handful and he was looking pretty decent. However, unfortunately, his profile was pretty much niche. It was a little bit non-existent, really. He became chairman of the Who Needs Him club. He was a tough fight that brought no rewards, not a lot of dollar, and no benefit to beating. So much so that after his contract expired along with the Povetkin fight, Matchroom decided to bin him off and not renew. He weren't too fussed though, because he said they had no interest in his career anyway. Obviously, Eddie weren't producing the fights that Michael expected, and there was certainly no talk of AJ or Dillian Whyte, etc. So he didn't feel like he was getting the respect. Then, just to continue the bad luck, the old COVID pandemic hit, which stalled him and in every other boxer's career for a little while. Then he finally returned 12 months after the Povetkin draw with a nothing fight against Sean Lowry, smashing him up in 4. Now during this time, even though he was sitting pretty at Ring Magazine number 8, and that should have put him in place for a big fight down the line, you just never really saw his name featured amongst any of the big boys. I mean, you had AJ, Fury, Wilder, White, Ruiz, Ortiz, Pulev, but no, he hardly got a mention, and it was like he didn't exist. However, in 2021, things were about to get even stranger when Eddie Hearn won purse bids for Michael Hunter against the up-and-coming Filip Hrgovic in an IBF eliminator, a fight that would have been a decent springboard for both men. But Michael, and I just don't know why, chose to completely fuck it off. Now there was a little bit of controversy surrounding this one because Maurizio Salami posted on Twitter that Michael had missed 2 attempts of testing under the clean boxing program, and at the very same time he goes and pulls out of the Hrgovic fight. So in a nutshell, well, that ain't the fucking best look, is it? You can make your own minds up on that one, but of course he got a bit of stick for this because it was looking like he had ducked old Philip in a very important final eliminator. As it turned out though, behind the scenes he'd been offered a very interesting contract with a company trying to make waves in the boxing world. Yes, Triller. Now Triller, to put it nicely, was an absolute box of shit. They formed Triller Fight Club in partnership with Snoop Dogg. Brilliant, good start. And then they put on incredible spectacles such as Jake Paul against a fucking basketball player, Jake Paul against Ben Askren, Holyfield against Belfort, and Tyson versus Jones. And they famously bid $6 million for Lopez versus Kambosos, a whopping double what Eddie Hearn bid, but totally fucked up everything and eventually had to pull out. It was basically run by knobheads. Anyway, in Michael's mind, this was very exciting times. He may have sacked off the Hrgovic fight, but there were bigger things on the horizon with Triller, and yes, it started with an absolute bang. A 10-rounder against Mike Wilson. Terrific. So yes, why he thought it was a good idea to sack off a world title route for a meaningless fight like this, I have no idea. But one thing's for sure, many boxing fans thought it was nothing more than a good old-fashioned duck. Either way, obviously he blew Mike away in a few rounds, but then things got even worse. It's harsh to say, but as if his bargaining power couldn't get any lower at this time, he goes and gets a controversial draw against Jerry Forrest. So yes, he was on the cusp of a world title opportunity and millions of dollars, but after this, big fights were an absolute mile away. He was obviously promised big money from Triller, and whether he got it or not, I have no idea, but from a business sense, it was a crazy move because you only had to look at the shoddy operation that Triller had going to know it was all just going to be a flash in the pan. Now we know he was trained and managed by Hasim Rahman for a large portion of his career, but him and whoever else had the reins on his business decisions simply seemed to get it wrong a whole lot more than they got it right. Not to mention he was promoted absolutely horrendously. There was just never any buzz surrounding Michael the Bounty Hunter, although maybe he's got mostly himself to blame for that one. And yeah, then he basically just drifted off into the oblivion. He tried to fight Parker, but that one quickly took a dump. Then he did sign for a fight with Hughie Fury in 2022, but Hughie got long COVID and had to pull out. More bad luck. And upon all this, he didn't really surface back into boxing for about a year and a half, till he returned in 2023 in something called the Team Combat League. Yep. Me neither. It was a bunch of one-round fights over the course of about 4 months, and he won 10 of them whilst losing 1. But, I mean, why? Just why? What other heavyweight does stuff like this? It's just a bit baffling, really. I mean, maybe he did earn good money out of it, I don't know, but I find that hard to believe. And anyway, surely the money wouldn't have compared to a big fight against a well-known heavyweight. I don't know. Then after this, we had a couple more meaningless fights on small shows before signing up to the IBA Champions Night in 2024 against an undefeated fighter called Soslenkov, in which he lost. And it's like, well, how the bloody hell did he end up here? Ring Magazine top 10 to obscurity in the space of a few years. Obviously, he pressed on, returning a couple of months later and beating Cassius Chaney by decision, then knocking out Christian Garcia at the end of the year. But once again, the momentum has been pretty much non-existent. Now, here we are in 2025 and he's been linked to fights with Kubrat Pulev going down the WBA route, and also big baby petty titty Jarrell Miller. Both decent fights, and should he win one of them, he's bound to start turning heads again. But why have these fights not materialised? Because Michael has made the one final genius business move and signed with the formidable Don King, the most prolific scam artist and most lethal boxing promoter in history. You just can't write it, can ya? It baffles me to no end why people still sign with this twonk. I mean, even though he's 400 years old, he's just as bad today as he always was, constantly blocking fights, suing people, trying not to pay him like he did to Dubious and Frank Warren. Ultimately, he's just the worst of the very worst. But I just think if you're mad enough to try and do a deal with him, then you kinda deserve the consequences of what's coming after. And so, in a nutshell, Michael's just sitting around stuck in legal limbo. Anyway, like I say, he's just made one bad decision after the other, terrible business moves all over the place, and in the end, Michael Hunter has ultimately become a bit of a wasted talent, really. I think he was a quality fighter at one point, but the fact that he's looked so flat in recent years is probably down to the fact that he's been lacking motivation. Maybe he's just let his ability slide because he's never really had anything juicy to get up for. In a way though, he has been a bit unlucky as well. I mean, he kind of got unlucky that it was Usyk he had to fight for a world title. Any other cruiserweight at any other time and he may have been able to win. He got unlucky to not beat Povetkin because that would have given him a springboard. He got unlucky that Triller was total shit. He got unlucky that Fury pulled out the fight. And he's got seriously unlucky that not one single promoter has ever fully invested in him to help make him a star. Now don't get me wrong, hopefully for him there is still time to get a big fight and make some good money out the game, like for example his name has been floated around with Fabio Wardley recently, but again, being the king of the Who Needs Him club, realistically what is in that fight for Fabio? Shit all. It ain't gonna happen, is it? So let's see what the future holds, if anything at all.